Most of our customers today are very conscious about this is my budget and this is the type of payment. And I think that the manufacturers that you are seeing now reaping a lot of those rewards are the manufacturers that didn't swing too wildly with that, who if they were affordability before and they're an affordability brand now, that they're very successful with that. And some of those manufacturers that were affordability and then maybe tried to capture some of that, craze and lost some of their core customers are finding their way back and trying to get back into that affordability.
Today, I'm sitting down with Michael Speigl, dealer principal of We Auto, a Michigan-based dealer group with 4 rooftops across the country. We discussed the habits he learned cutting his teeth at Lithia, how it prepared him for his biggest challenges yet, and why he's spending $250,000 on dealership culture per year. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: Phone Ninjas, CDK Global, and my very own CDG Recruiting. And now, let's get into the show. Michael Speigl on the CDG podcast. Michael, welcome.
Hey, Yossi, thanks for having me.
Michael Speigl, we finally made it happen. Thanks for coming on. How's life?
Life is fantastic, other than the fact that it's probably 18 degrees with like a 20-mile-an-hour wind outside. We have 5 inches of snow yesterday. But other than that, fantastic. I think we right now probably have about 10 to 12 cars out, so I'm not complaining too much. And I haven't checked in our stores in Nashville, and luckily they have no snow in Nashville. It's beautiful.
You're the only dealer principal that owns stores in Tampa and doesn't live in Florida. What's going on over here?
Well, yeah. So I spent all my retail, and I'll just start from scratch here. So, because I'm guessing you're going to ask me that anyway. Went to the University of Michigan and graduated from the University of Michigan and got right into auto retail. I didn't know anybody in automotive, but was sold a dream of how lucrative it is and a career path, and they were right. I'm so appreciative of the recruiters that came onto the University of Michigan's campus to talk to me about auto retail. Started very briefly in South Bend, Indiana, which was a great place to learn. And then very quickly at like 23 years old, moved to Bradenton, Florida, and worked for a fantastic organization there. Still very close with the dealer principal and family there. Really got lucky with that transition down to Florida and spent basically the last 20 years in Florida. Worked for the Cox family for about 7 years. And then in 2010, had the opportunity
when you say Cox family, not Cox Automotive.
No, not that Cox family. No, smaller organization. They own 2 stores in Bradenton, Chevy Mazda.
You're like remove a couple zeros.
Yeah, well, the funny part is the Cox family that I worked for is over 100 years old, their organization. I don't know the history of the bigger Cox organization. I think they're old like that too. I wonder which one is actually older. So maybe you can fact check that for me. But long story short,
I wonder which one's actually richer. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I would just say I had a great experience with that family and still talk to them today. As a matter of fact, Chris Cox is the trustee of my estate today. Tells you how much, faith and trust I have in that family. Wonderful, wonderful people. And
that means a lot.
It does. And if you knew them, it would make sense. Just truly salt of the earth, hardworking, honest, ethical, wonderful, wonderful people. So, and I hated leaving them, quite frankly. I never would have left them. The unfortunate part was my last name wasn't Cox, and I wasn't one. And they had 6 children at the time. Or they still obviously have 6. And it's just, that's the tough dynamic of a family business, is how do you continue to grow and expand and outside. And so I left the organization to buy a minority stake in a Honda dealership in Wesley Chapel, and that was just the right opportunity. And as sad as it was, we all understood that was the right move for me at that time. Started there in 2010. Like a lot of people from 2010 on, continued to get better every year. And then we acquired another Honda dealership, Tampa Honda, in 2014.
Take a quick pause right there. So what was your first dealership?
Wesley Chapel Honda in 2010.
I always like to ask about the first deal. Like, how did you get your foot in the door? That's always, to me, like, it's the step function change. Typically, you go from the dealership to ownership. And unless you're becoming an operating partner, it's a pretty big leap. So I always love asking that question. Like, how was that transition? Tell us about that.
Well, yeah. So I'll give you a little bit more to that. So I really, truly think that because I worked for such a great organization, had a great staff, really well-run family business, there was nothing that was going to take me away from that short of having some sort of ownership. And so in 2010, that was the opportunity that it took for me to even entertain. I think when you're young and you're aggressive and you're working your tail off, I think a lot of opportunities present themselves. But I felt really fortunate that the Cox family gave me such a great opportunity at such a young age. I really felt I owed them a lot. So anytime I would get recruited or somebody would talk to me about a better opportunity or more pay. It just really never enticed me because I really liked what we were doing and I loved our team and I loved the family. But I think that conversation changed a little bit when I met my partner at that time, who said there was an opportunity for me to buy in with him as he was buying the store. And so that was just something that was not going to be afforded at the Cox. And I understood it. It just was not an opportunity there. So buying a minority piece there and then being able to buy a minority piece into Tampa Honda when we bought that store as well in 2014 parlayed me into, so fast forward, we later got an Open Point Lexus store in Wesley Chapel, and my partner already had a Toyota store in Wesley Chapel. And so in 2019, he made the decision that he wanted to sell to Lithia. And so we sold the dealerships to Lithia. He maintained the Lexus store and sold the other 3 dealerships to Lithia. But that allowed me, that transaction allowed me the capital to then go out and buy my own stores as dealer principal.
I was pretty surprised because when I looked through just your basic times on your background, I was like, there's no way Michael's only been a dealer principal for a couple of years, because I thought it was much longer, and it is, apparently.
There is a leap for sure as a managing partner, because then we sold to Lithia and I became a group vice president for Lithia and learned a whole different side of the business. When you work for a family-owned organization, and especially when you're kind of the tip of that small little spear, to then you go to be a part of the largest public retailer in the world, you just learn so many things. And that stop on my career chain really helped professionalize a lot of the things that we do today, whether it's how we look at acquisitions or, how we look at branding and coming to market and things like that. It was just a really great opportunity to learn from a public organization, and then took that in 2021 and parlayed that into buying my own stores in Ann Arbor. And so it was very interesting. I remember this like it was yesterday. Got the phone call on a Sunday morning. I was walking down the stairs to go to the pool with my kids, which was tradition on Sundays. It was always kind of, daddy day. We have 5 young kids. And so, we work 5 or 6 days a week. So Sunday was the day to spend with the family. And I got a phone call about this opportunity. And so I took the call, walked back upstairs into my room, board shorts. And then I was up there for a couple hours, kind of looking at financial statements and doing a few different things. And finally my wife came up and she's like, hey, are you going to come downstairs and spend some time with the family today? And I said, yeah, no, I'm working on something. Well, long story short, through a whole day of that, so Sunday morning woke up, nothing was happening. By the end of that day, my wife is born and raised in Bradenton, Florida, by the way. All of my kids, all 5 of our kids are born and raised in Bradenton, Florida. By the end of one day, I said, hey, babe, I think we may be moving to Michigan. And just like that. And she was like, all right, is that the right decision? And I was like, I think it might be. It's going to take some more effort and energy here, but just like that, that's how it happened. And so obviously completed the due diligence and the seller of these 2 dealerships was a wonderful woman. She's in her upper 70s and really cared about family in a way that was super transparent when you saw the culture, but really could appreciate, me and my family coming up there to be dealer principal for the first time. And she really helped me with that transition. She allowed me to start working in the dealership probably 30 days before we closed, which is really, really unusual. And it helped me build some relationships, but also, all my stuff was in Florida. Our house was in Florida. Everything was in Florida. I didn't have an office up here. So, gave me a place to work, and we bought a house obviously in Michigan. So it just was a really quick transition, and took the whole family, because without my wife's support, without my children's support, I don't think we could have made such a drastic move to where, we lived in Florida for almost 20 years. My wife was born and raised, lived her whole life there. Her whole family's there, her grandparents, her parents, her aunts and uncles.
Okay. So
everybody lives in Bradenton.
Oh, in Bradenton. I think you're going to tell me in the north. Man, you got a pretty good wife. She said yes from Florida to Michigan. God bless her.
She's the best.
It's actually super under discussed how important it is to have a good, husband, wife in these types of situations, right? They can stop you from just, it's one decision, obviously has an impact through the rest of your life, the rest of your career, but having that support, it's hard to even, put into words how important it is, because we've all seen it, right? You try to, hire someone, maybe you got to do a relocation, and the wrong dynamic there, or maybe, the husband or the wife don't want it, or whatever it may be, it doesn't work out, right? It makes such a big difference when the couple is aligned, or in your case, right? Like you had that support, boom, moving to Michigan, and look how successful you've been. Obviously tremendously successful. And we'll talk a lot about that today, but that's a really great story.
Yeah, we talked about that from a very young age. age about, what are your aspirations? What are your career goals, etc. And we talk about even inside the organization, without the support of my wife and kids, none of this would be possible. And my wife also knows, like, if she wanted me to drop it all tomorrow and to just be a dad, as painful as it would be, I would drop it all tomorrow. Luckily, she doesn't do that. It hasn't said that. But, my wife and I have been together for over 20 years. And I've worked 6 days a week for the majority of that 20 years. And that's a lot. It takes a toll on a family for sure when there's always another manufacturer meeting. There's always another dealer trip. There's another 20 group meeting. There's always something happening. You want to go do a dealer visit and study best practices. Well, that's at the sacrifice of your wife, my wife, taking 5 kids, getting them to basketball practice, getting them to soccer practice, getting them ready for school, all the things in the snow. My wife had barely even seen snow before. So now here she is, 5 inches of snow, trekking in her Sienna minivan, with kids in the back, trying to figure it out. Exactly. So that, we here can be nonstop and chase all of our ambitions here. And that's not lost on me. I couldn't imagine a scenario where my wife said, hey, we need to drop it all. But I mean it. I think if she came to me and said, hey, Mike, I'm struggling with something or I feel like I'm on the break or whatever, I would have to. I think she sacrificed the last 20 years for me to help us to get to this point. And if she needed me to sacrifice for her, I think that I would. And here's how I would do it. I would hire a president to come in and operate the businesses, and I would step away from the business for as long as she...
Okay. So you're being more rational. You wouldn't divest the business, but I think you harp on it. I think knowing you and we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of months specifically. I know you're not bullshitting, and people as they listen to this conversation, I think they'll get to know you better. You have let's go in a bit of a different direction because I want to touch on some things related to this specifically, which is you were talking about your Lithia experience, and you just mentioned hire a president. I mean, you're talking about you've seen the car business at a very large professional scale. You've also seen it on, family business scale, smaller scale. In some cases, might be slightly less professionalized. I am curious, you mentioned that the Lithia experience was so impactful in your career. Tell us just a little bit about some things that you maybe believed about the car business or, specific ways you would operate, principles you had that after your experience at a big public company that changed. What were these things that you were just completely wrong on?
So number one, right now today, we have 2 stores in Ann Arbor and we have 2 stores in Nashville. And I would tell you that before I would have never said that was possible. My previous world was I was in, Wesley Chapel and Tampa were our only locations. And I was in those stores every day. And I physically almost went to each one of those stores every day. They were all only 25 minutes apart. And so before I would have told you, you got to touch it. You got to breathe it. You got to be in the stores. And it's hard to do it any other way. And so
that's a phenomenal observation, by the way. That's a phenomenal. I just asked someone that on a podcast the other day, but I don't want to cut you off, but that's a really good point that you're like, I got to be there.
Well, the Lithia model forces you out of there. And look, if I could have my druthers, I would absolutely be in the store because I love the people. I love the technicians. I love the porters. It's just such a great culture and a great camaraderie when you have a great culture that I personally enjoy being there. However, operationally, with the right people and the right partnerships and the right strategy, there absolutely is a way to maintain and scale culture in a way that I would have previously told you was impossible.
All right, so let's talk about that because I just doing my research, looking at your website, reading about your company. I would say you're 95th plus percentile in terms of organizational branding structure. I noticed a little detail. I mean, you're everything from the mission statement to kind of how you talk about the business. It seems like you do things in a very, I would say, corporate way. Not to say corporate as in cold or, out of touch, not in that sense, but you really have a defined structure, kind of here's what our business is really about. And, typically you think a dealership, the mission statement is let's sell more cars, let's grow our gross. You are very different. Let's just start talking about that, right? What is your mission statement? Why is it not BS? How do you really live that through your organization? Tell us about that a little bit.
How much time you got? So
well, I would give us the executive summary and then we'll dig into the specific points.
Yeah. So I would just say I credit a lot of that. So my previous partner in Wesley Chapel was the president of Southeast Toyota before he retired and got into automotive retail. So if you know anything about JM family and their enterprises and Southeast Toyota specifically, it's just an incredibly well-run organization that anybody would be proud to be a part of. And so seeing that modeled at such a young age, when I was 30, I was the managing partner of Wesley Chapel Honda. And certainly didn't have any of that in my DNA. It just wasn't what I grew up with or was accustomed to, and really accredit a lot of that to the 10 years that I spent there. But our mission statement is we inspire people to grow, making our families, our team, and our community proud. And so we'll break that down. We inspire people to grow. What are ways that we live that out? So the very first thing that we want to talk about is we started a nonprofit called Prep and Me in Florida when we were there. And this organization supports Title I students who are academically gifted, who otherwise wouldn't be able to navigate the college landscape. So we start working with students in the 7th grade. We supply them with iPads, laptops, internet in the home, tutors. We have college admissions counselors on staff. We do college campus visits, and we really work with these kids on every test prep, every grade, every course selection, every extracurricular. We send them to Hobie, we send them to all these different leadership things, and we just inspire these kids to grow. We're really passionate about it. We just recently last year brought it to Michigan. So excited to get the chapter started here. And that was me when I was a kid. I was a free lunch kid. I went to the University of Michigan on Pell Grants and student loans. And I really thank God for my mother who worked hard. My mother worked at Meyer for a really long time. My dad's a truck driver right now today. And, instilled a lot of discipline in me. But it was hard for us to navigate how do you get to college and how do you pay for it. And so we're now paying that forward and inspiring these young kids to grow, and we're super passionate about it. In addition to that, I'm a professor at the University of Michigan Business School. And I love their mission of continuing education at such a high level, not only because I went there, but just they're really passionate about the side of education. A lot of people think about Michigan football and some other things, but trust me, if you know Michigan, they're about academics first. The med school, the business school, the law school, the school of engineering, the school of education, they really, really, really do education at a high level, and it inspires me, quite frankly. And so to give back to the University of Michigan in that way and be an adjunct professor there for the last few years has been an awesome experience.
This episode is brought to you by Phone Ninjas. Dealers, are your store's phones costing you money or making you money? Phone Ninjas works to double and even triple appointment set and show rates the right way. With their best-in-class active coaching, situational scripts, and one-on-one coaching sessions, Phone Ninjas will set up your team for customer-facing success. Stop losing opportunities to the competition and deploy the ninjas. Visit phoneninjas.com and elevate your game today. That's phoneninjas.com, or click the link in the show notes below. Well, I was going to ask you why go academia, but I did listen that your wife and mother-in-law were teachers as well. So I know that about you too. But yeah, I do want to ask you a specific question. So I was going to ask you why. That was my first question. It was going to be like, why get into this mission-driven stuff? Like, why? What drives you to even do that? Because I don't think that you can get into all that stuff if you're not. And I think you have to really care about it to truly do it well and to even do it, period. But my next question that I think many dealers listening are thinking right now is how, right? Because let's take a quick step back. Inventory, affordability, interest rates, EVs, hiring, firing. There's no shortage of shit to do in this business day in and day out. You're a pretty substantial operator, multiple stores. How do you have time for this?
I would just say we're really passionate about it. There isn't anything that we do that's phony. And when you talk about the different initiatives that we have, whether it's serving our Title I scholars in Prep and Me, they're all wonderful kids. If you met these kids, you would do it too, Yossi. You would want to get involved. They're just such wonderful kids who don't have the same resources. And you can tell a lot of them are single parents. A lot of them are English as a second language households. They're not going to navigate this landscape to get into college in a way that I see my kids. So I even look at, when I grew up and trying to figure all that stuff out versus my own kids. They have so much of this figured out for them because their mother was in education. Tell me
about it.
Because we're so passionate.
I committed to my college. I didn't even visit it. I didn't even do a tour. I was just like, this one looks good. Good times.
I would just say it's really authentic from that aspect, the giving back. And the other thing is, we named the auto group We Auto because when I started in automotive at 22, I was a finance manager with student loans from the University of Michigan and not a dollar to my name. I have no idea what my credit score was. I probably didn't even have one because I didn't have any credit cards or anything. And so there have been thousands of people that have helped us get to where we are today, that it's not just one person. We all are focused on this mission of inspiring people to grow, making our families, our team, and our community proud. So it's very organic, and there are 24 hours in a day. There's the same 24 hours in a day for everybody. One of our other core values is being nonstop.
You're one thoughtful. I was hoping you would tell me that you like to play the Nintendo Wii when you were 15, but I can go with Wii Auto for a different reason too.
That's because I'm much older than you. The Wii wasn't even out when I was 15. All right.
I had to make some joke. Come on, give me some credit.
No, Wii just stands for all of us. Wii Auto.
Yeah. A bit of a different question, but can you just tell me a little bit about your day-to-day today running these dealerships? I want to get into more of the nitty-gritty of kind of how you focus your days, how you organize them. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we have general managers in our 2 stores here in Ann Arbor, general manager at Subaru, general manager at Toyota, and a 20% partner in our stores in Nashville who I have worked with for over a decade. And all of which are tremendous operators, high levels of integrity, great work ethics. And I talk to them every single day. And it's not because they need my guidance. They could run a store probably better than I could from just a general manager perspective. But honestly, as a motion of wanting to continue to learn, if there's something I can pass along or if something one of our other stores is doing. So we speak every day. I would also say accounting is another function where we're in every day. And, the accounting department is the lifeblood of a dealership. As you know, nothing happens without the accounting department making it happen. So making sure they have all the resources, they have all the information, they have everything they need is a super high priority for us as well. And I would say, when you talk about kind of the extracurriculars, if you will, a lot of it revolves around family scheduling. For sure, whether it's a basketball game or, soccer game, if there's any way to fit that into the schedule, it gets anchored into the schedule right away. And that's the other thing I would say from a life hack, and a lot of people do this, so it's not unique, but everything happens on the calendar. So if there's
you're like very regimented like that.
To the extreme. If it's not on my calendar, it does not happen. I pretend, it's not that I pretend, I just forget about it because there's so many things on the calendar. It's imperative to get kids stuff on there first and family stuff on there first when we can. Now, there are absolutely times where you can't. So for instance, have a Subaru meeting tomorrow that flying out for, and it's important that I'm there. So I'm going to miss a basketball game, but I'm going to a basketball game tonight as soon as this podcast is over. I'm super pumped about it. So I would just say calendaring is the utmost way in which we can fit as many of these things in. And then flexibility, that's the other beauty about being the dealer is you have the opportunity to schedule some of these things around your schedule. And if I would say one of the pros of, being a dealer principal versus when I worked for Lithia, Lithia, big organizations, it's not a Lithia thing. It's any big organization. You can't slow that machine down, right? It requires certain things to happen at certain times, and everybody's kind of got to be a part of that. And so now having a little bit of flexibility to maybe schedule this podcast before my son's game instead of it happening right in the middle of my son's basketball game just is an awesome thing. And the other thing is, a lot of people have said, how in the world did you leave Tampa to move to Ann Arbor? First of all, Ann Arbor is a beautiful place, but the quality of life that we have here in Ann Arbor, because, our K through 8 that our kids go to is 2 minutes away from our house. Our son's high school is 11 minutes away from our house. The gym is 7 minutes away from the house. The dealership is 8 minutes away from our house. The University of Michigan is 14 minutes away from our house. So whether I'm teaching or going to a game or going to the gym or going to work, it all is super, super close in a way that Tampa just could not afford that. The traffic alone, getting from one side of the other to the other, it just was impossible to have this much lifestyle back. And so my wife has really appreciated that. My wife is very much a family first gal. And so the fact that we get to so many different family functions, she doesn't care that it's in Ann Arbor or that it's in Tampa or where it is. She just cares about our family. And so it's been awesome.
That's great. Michael, you're clearly a very progressive dealer, right? You do things, you're very forward thinking. Where do you stand on, the biggest automotive trends, whether it be digital retailing or, whatever, you name it, integrated technology in your dealership, right? Reducing the touch points with the customer, AI now, but just in general, where do you stand on all these? Well, one price selling, which is not novel or new, but it's obviously a thing. Where do you just stand on this whole spectrum?
So interesting you asked that, and I would love to turn that on you because I was just asked this the other day. So I'm part of an organization called YPO, and I'm the learning officer trying to come up with learning events globally, and somebody on the board, the Automotive Network board, asked, hey, we'd love to do, and this was somebody from Europe, what about doing a educational session on digital retailing? And I want to hear your and I have an opinion on this, but I want to hear your opinion on where are we? What inning are we in? Where are we at with digital retailing in the United States from a retail perspective? What's your perception?
Well, first of all, my perception for the industry at large is that there's no doubt about it that giving consumers options in every transaction that they can actually shop however they want is the best. You're just literally giving them more ways to do things. Why would they not be happy about that? And I'm not saying that you're bombarding them with options, but I'm saying that you're directing them down the funnel that that's right for them. It's all automatic behind the scenes. So my scientific response, if that's the right way to even call this, is that the industry or what's right for a dealer just depends on their time horizon. That's like my nerdy response, because the truth is, do I believe that most dealers would be better off with, one price selling and, stuff like that, just all very transparent, no haggle processes? I do long term. I also am practical, and I know the short-term hit that comes with making these types of changes to a dealership that's maybe not used to it. It impacts bottom line, it impacts people's comp plans, it impacts many things. So my scientific response is like, hey, it comes down to your time horizon. I do think it's the right thing for the customer. If your time horizon is long enough to where you can absorb this, you're willing to take it, swallow the pill now, and grow the business, in a different way. Now, back to your specific question, digital retailing, I'm giving you kind of a combination here of anecdotes, just sentiment. I think that, with some exceptions of course, like Carvana, who that's the only way to shop with them and stuff like that. I think car shopper wants to pick up in store, period. Or I should say it differently. They want to see their car, have a chance to interact with it. And ideally, if they're buying in market or a local customer, get to know someone, have a point of contact, have somewhere they could go, right? But they don't want to do everything in store. We know this as well. So I think, I don't think that there's a lot of, I don't want to say innovation, because we all know that many, many digital retailing tools nowadays are still just, super lead forms. Not all, but plenty are still these like super lead generators, and there's no retailing about it. But I think that we have to really be cognizant of that. The fact that, customers wanted a large chunk of the transaction online, but at the end of the day, if it's a local in-market customer, which most are, they want to, come in store, see the car, have some point of contact that they could go back to, get familiarity. They are making a big purchase at the end of the day. That's my take in a nutshell. I'll flip it back to you.
Yeah, I would just say my take from the in the weeds on the ground level is the number one thing that we need to push digital retailing forward is the customer to want that. And there are a ton of smart people throwing a ton of money. When you think about Toyota and SmartPath, or you think about Lithia and Driveway, or a lot of these different big organizations that are throwing a lot of money at this, and you're not seeing mass adoption, it's not because dealers are fighting it or not putting, resources on their website or, all these other things. It's because by and large, customers are still picking up the phone, calling in. They're still sending in lead form submissions. They're still driving, heaven forbid, they drive into a dealership, or they come into the service lane and realize that they want to transact on a new car. There are so many ways that customers are deciding to transact on sales of new and used vehicles that the vast minority are desiring to only transact online. When the customers flip, trust me, the dealers are going to flip. We don't care. We just want to sell cars. I don't care if it's an electric car, a gas car, a bike. If we can sell it and help a customer solve a problem, we're going to do it. And the one thing that I've also learned is some of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met are car dealers, and they will absolutely figure that out when the customer is ready for it. And so that's where we kind of see it. When the customer adoption comes up, I think that you'll see even more resources being thrown at that. And not that it's bad, not that there shouldn't be a piece of the pie, that there are customers today that want to transact that way. There absolutely are, and they're transacting that way. But it's such a vast minority of customers that we just can't go all in on that model, because we'd alienate the majority of the customers.
Yeah. Look, in other words, if you had to just sum up what I said, is omni-channel. But I think to your point, the one thing that you said a sentence there that I wanted to pick on, which is, you were talking about how we get more customers to transact online. And then my rebuttal to that is why? Or like, why force that, right? That's the real question that needs to be asked. It's just like, when I was talking to investors, they used to say, oh, so why sell cars on this, digitally on the internet? And I used to love just saying, look, I don't care about the internet. I will sell it, in the newspaper, if that was a more efficient, profitable way and offered a better customer experience. So I think that's what it comes down to. to. It's solving that puzzle and saying, okay, what is the real benefit here for everyone? And does it make sense in my market for my dealership? And so I fully understand your point.
Yeah, and we used to sell cars in newspapers, right? When it was the most efficient model to get that information to the consumer. And we'll continue to adapt. And as that becomes more prevalent and more customers want to do business that way, we will.
So let's take it a step further. What do you think is going to be some of the biggest shift that we're going to see in auto retail over the next 12 to 24 months? Like, what's going through your mind? What are you preparing for?
Yeah, 12 to 24 months is interesting because I think it's very manufacturer specific. So, we have a Stellantis dealership, and I think the next 24 months are going to be continued growth for that franchise. I really do. I think they've done a number of really nice things that dealers are supportive of that are going to continue to pay dividends for them. Now, granted, they're coming from a different place than, say, our Toyota store. I think that Toyota's in an interesting spot because they have high demand. Their hybrid, strategy is really paying dividends for them in a way that they have not been able to catch up from a supply perspective. So you're going to continue to see, higher margins, lower day supply. When you come to, say, our Ford business, Ford has done some really great things. And I would almost say Ford maybe has done the best job of creating a option for everyone when it comes to drivetrains. So they have a really robust EV lineup that they've invested billions of dollars on. They have some hybrid technology. They have trucks. They have diesels. And I really think it depends on what manufacturer. And then I will also say, I think it depends on where you're at too. I don't think that a Nissan dealer is going to be impacted in, say, Tampa, Florida, the same way that a Nissan dealer in Idaho will be impacted. I really think it's going to be brand specific and location specific. So I know I apologize, that's not answering your question. But the other thing I will say is I think that adoption of all of these big technologies, so, the kind of what keeps you up at night and what are you really worried about? So when you talk about electrification, I go back to my previous statement. Dealers would love electric cars if we could sell them. What dealers don't want is for us to have to sell electric cars to people who don't want to buy them, because all that does is drive down margins for both the manufacturer, who have to put big rebates on them to move them, and dealers who are paying floor plan on what are not cheap cars. There are no $11,000 EVs here in the United States. And so, when your average EV is $60,000, $70,000 or whatever it is, we're paying floor plan on that every day when we can't move it. And that's the only sort of frustration that we have. So finding more balance in what is the real, market effectiveness for any, is it 6%? Is it 12%? If that market share were 30% because 30% of the customers wanted it, we'd love it and we'd sell 30%. But what we can't have is 30% of the supply being EV and 10% of the market share of demand being for EVs. That's a bad formula for everybody. So I think that will continue to shift over time.
Yeah, I was going to say that the only thing there is, do you think Ford, then you mentioned they mix it up with the drivetrain and offering something for everyone, but do you think that the average American truly cares about their drivetrain, or do they just care about their monthly payment and buying a quality car that's going to last them without many repairs? Like the average American, do you really think they care about drivetrain? Like, do you think Ford is just over investing? Forget the EV investment, but in general, do you think over investing in all these different drivetrains where the average person just wants to get a freaking car at a reasonable price?
1,000% that. However, I feel like Ford had a gun to their head at one point with a government that was telling them very directly, we're going to sell EVs, and they mandated it and put in a time horizon
that's tough.
Unattainable. So I'm not saying that Ford, drove this each EV train by themselves and they specifically went to get into it. I think that they were following the orders that they were given and using the best information that they had at the time. Now, in that same vein, if there is some sort of environmental or use case for them, I think Ford absolutely wanted to do the right thing, being carbon neutral, etc. But as a lot of the data is showing now, hybrids are probably more carbon neutral than EVs are. And so it's where do you find that balance, right? Of why are we doing the right thing? Another interesting part is, do you know the number one, at least a year ago, this information's a year old, the number one leading demographic factor for an EV buyer, do you know what that was?
This episode is brought to you by CDK Global, the go-to technology partner for car dealers and automakers. CDK doesn't just deliver top-tier tech solutions, they are also a trusted source for industry insights. Their research and insights team produces must-read white papers, blogs, and reports all year long. One of my favorite recent standouts is the Friction Points study. This unique report dives into the perspectives of both car buyers and dealership staff to uncover what's slowing down the purchase process. This year, it reveals how dealers are narrowing the gap on time expectations and why F&I remains a critical piece of the experience. If you want the full scoop, check out the Friction Points points, white paper, and more at cdk.com/insights or click the link in the show notes below.
Demographic factor for an EV buyer. I have no idea.
They were a registered Democrat. That was the number one indicator of whether or not you're going to be.
That's definitely dated.
So that's what I was about to say. So there is no updated data around that, but I would be dying to know if that's made a dramatic swing. Now that maybe the politics around Tesla and Elon and EVs have shifted a little bit, if suddenly that's no longer the case. So it changes so often, but yet doesn't change fast enough. When you talk about that swing of how quickly that went in 12 months time, because 12 months ago, that wasn't even really a thing, right? The whole Elon, Republican, Tesla, that wasn't the rhetoric. But I don't think that the market has completely shifted to where now if you're a registered Democrat, you're not even considering an EV. Like I don't think that has shifted that quickly, but I absolutely think that markets like that will continue to shift.
Yeah. No, I don't think it has either. I think maybe like extremists on the left are and maybe opposed to buying Teslas. I know plenty of Democrats, Republicans, anywhere in between. And I could tell you that I see Teslas all over the spectrum at this point. So I don't, maybe, like I said, maybe on the extremes, it has made an impact to sales. And look, there was also like the Tesla overhang. If you remember, Tesla's stock was dropping and it sort of coincided with sales drops at the time. But it was around the time Elon started getting involved into politics. Then, of course, Trump won and that had an incredible impact on all of Elon's, all of the Tesla and all his companies, really. So that was a tremendous performance there.
I want to get back to one question you asked me earlier about this topic where you said, do customers really care what drivetrain it is? And I would say,
the average customer
on the margin a little bit, what they really care about is affordability. And we're back to that. If we were talking about, the COVID pendulum as to where I've been doing this for over 20 years, it was like the very first 20 years of my career, every customer I ever ran into was looking for a $300 payment. I don't care if they were looking for a Tahoe or if they were looking for, a Ford Focus. They wanted a $300 payment. Then all of a sudden we got into COVID, $1,200 payment, no problem, and that has certainly gone away. And now we're back to that. And it's probably not $300 anymore, but most of our customers today are very conscious about this is my budget and this is the type of payment. And I think that the manufacturers that you are seeing now reaping a lot of those rewards are the manufacturers that didn't swing too wildly with that, who if they were affordability before and they're an affordability brand now, that they're very successful with that. And some of those manufacturers that were affordability and then maybe tried to capture some of that, craze and lost some of their core customers are finding their way back and trying to get back into that affordability. And even like manufacturers who stopped producing sedans, there are a lot of customers who come in every day asking for sedans. And a lot of it's because of affordability, both in fuel economy and those sort of things. And that's coming back in a major way.
It's a good take. Michael, tell us a little bit about, what can you tell us about your margins? Like, where do you stack up with your peers? Where do you overperform, underperform, just when it comes to dealership margins across departments, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think in a few areas where we really focus hard on and work hard in is customer retention. When we started this journey here, specifically at our Toyota store, we were in the bottom 10 in the region in service retention. Some of it was capacity, some of it was a lot of reasons. And now we're always consistently out of 120 some stores in the top 2 or 3.
Tell us what were those reasons? Like, why were you bottom 10 when you started?
I would say for the best of intentions. The reason why I think that some of that was happening was because of trying to take care of the customer at a really high level and the fear that if you process too many customers at one time, that you would upset a customer. And so I think some of that drove maybe a reduction in scheduling, if that makes sense. Just the true thought of the customer. I don't want to paint this picture that we came in here reckless abandoning and we said, but I will absolutely say, there are times where we'll have a 2-hour wait for an oil change when it's really busy and we schedule a lot. And so our service business has grown pretty dramatically over that course. And that takes a certain amount of fortitude to know that you need to approach that customer and let them hear the story. We really apologize. We're really working hard to increase efficiency and get our customers through. And there are times like this and where you're going to give them free service because that's the collateral damage of continuing to try to build and scale. So I would say there are strategies to manage that growth, right? Where yes, it gets a little uncomfortable from time to time. The old saying, if you want to make an omelet, you got to break an egg. But I would also say that being aggressive in nature and playing offense and driving as many customers to your organization as possible is overall a very healthy thing. And so we try to do that at a really high level. I would say another thing that we work really hard on, a lot of us have been in different 20 groups and seen benchmarks and best practice for a long time. We always want to be above in, net to gross, net to sales, benchmarks. We're fortunate to be there in our organizations. We really try to focus hard of driving sales as well. We do over about $400 million in sales now, and we want to continue to scale that through service and through sales, and then through acquisitions as well. So I would just say, being aggressive, wanting to grow, continuous improvement, those are probably some of the hallmarks or characteristics. Along with, I would say our number one hallmark is our employee culture and, what we invest in. As you mentioned at the beginning, our mission statement, our branding, we put a lot of time and effort and resources behind what is our vision going to be? What is our mission statement going to be? What are our core values? We bring all the stakeholders together, and then we invest in that heavily, every day now. There are tons of things that we do to invest in over-index in the cultural aspect.
So would you say your success has been driven, like what you just mentioned, that example with service, that's a very fundamental, that's a form of just great communication, setting expectations with the customer, and boom, like you've changed a big part of your business. Would you say that, is there anything that you do that's more kind of out of the box that's been that's had a big impact on your business? Or has it been more of, like the fundamentals are always important. We know that. And I'm sure you're great at them. You just spoke about one thing. But in addition to that, is there anything that's sort of, things that you do differently, would you say, at your dealership?
Yeah, this is going to sound really stupid to you, but here's what I would say it is. So I had to get this list written down because I didn't even remember them all. But just last year, these are our cultural events. We had multiple employee appreciation lunches. We had a company basketball game. We had a family summer cookout. We had a flag football game, a company picnic for all families. We had anniversary lunches. We paid for everybody to go on a Cedar Point trip. We had a paintball tournament. We had a chili cook-off with first, second, and third prize. We had a 400-car Subaru Hell Cruise to close out the Hell Cruise season. A Halloween costume contest and pumpkin carving contest. Thanksgiving luncheon. A holiday party, casino night, 80s night, 20s night. Ugly sweater contest. Secret Santa. Mindful morning meditation with a guided meditation. Our signature event is our We Care Awards, where we rent out the big house. We rent out Comerica Park where the Tigers play. This year we're renting out the Henry Ford Museum. It's a total night of celebrating our employees. We had a cooking competition for the community where it was meats and Yodas. So we had a bunch of Toyota cars and a cooking competition. Cooking classes, both virtually and in person. We did a whirly ball event. I didn't even know what whirly ball was for our employees. We have a golf tournament. We have a kickball tournament.
I got to ask you a quick question. What was the total budget for all this?
$100,000-ish.
For the entire year?
Well, no, that's just for so our We Care Awards budget is probably 60 to 70 grand just for that one night. So I'm
everything you just mentioned for the entire year, how much are we talking about?
Probably 250 grand.
Okay. How many employees do you have?
This is for our Ann Arbor campus, and we have 215 employees.
Do you think if you went to every single employee and you said this, or I give you $1,000, what would they say?
I would all say they would say this for sure.
It's not that
because
compelling.
This touches so many
I was hoping I was going to have like 10,000 or something, but $1,000 is not that compelling.
So many employees and things they're passionate about. Like we do a video game tournament. The reason why we did a video game tournament was because a lot of our technicians play video games and we couldn't get them to the basketball game or the football game. But as soon as we did a video game tournament, we had people coming out of the woodworks, all talking to each other and, being aggressive of who's going to get the trophy. And so Toyota won the trophy and, next year Subaru wants to win the trophy. And, we have bowling night, go-karting, yoga, all the above.
When are you able to do on this? Two-part question. When do you do this? Given we all work, retail, you all work in retail, right? It's like nonstop. That's the first question. The second question is, I'm sure many people are listening thinking like, okay, cool, you do all this. Does it actually matter?
So let me tell you that this is only half the equation.
How do you measure? Let's be car people right now. Does it sell cars?
Last year, we did 47 community events where we went out to Ronald McDonald House. We went out to Mott's Children's Hospital. We went out to Habitat for Humanity. That's in addition to these 40-some events. We had another 47 events where our employees left the dealership and went and donated their time. So we had over 1,000 hours of community service with our 2 dealerships and our 200 employees. I saw something on LinkedIn yesterday from a great auto group, and they have over 20 locations yesterday, and they said they had, I think, 900 community service hours, which is awesome. I love that. There are not a lot of organizations that have 900 community service hours. We had over 1,000 with 2 dealerships. So now to answer your question, how do you find time for, a euchre tournament and Ronald McDonald House and do it at scale.
For the technician, right?
This is the thing. Again, we try to meet people where they're at. So we don't ask every single employee to go to all 100 of these events. That's impossible and not scalable and not respectful to their families and everything that they have going on. But we have over 50 to 60% engagement in just our community service section. So that's just people donating their time. And then a ton more. I'd say we have almost 100% participation in all of our cultural events, but at different times and places, right? Everybody gets to pick what makes sense for them. So what makes it all work for us is we have somebody that's their only job. Our director of community relations, she's fantastic. She's been with us for over 3 years. Her whole job is to make sure that our employees can participate and live out our first core value, which is being community focused, and also all these cultural events that make us who we are. She focuses on that 24/7. And she's a hard worker. She's not working 9 to 5. She's not working 30 hours a week. She's working sometimes 60 hours a week, just making sure that these events are awesome for our employees. And I don't know how you duplicate that. And to answer your question, I don't know how you track ROI, but what I will tell you we do track is every single year we do an employee engagement survey. We have a third-party company anonymously survey all of our employees end of the year, every year. And we track the performance and the engagement by department, and then as a total, and then as a group. And we've consistently seen our engagement numbers independently by a third-party company continue to trend up every year. And so that's how we measure, our success, if you will. But I don't know how you measure, are we making any money on this? But I'll go back to, some of this.
By the way, I didn't mean it like that. I think in general, like ROI can be qualitative, right? Like better employee retention, right? That's ROI. That's what the specific I meant. But I think you're making a good point.
Yeah, I would just say for us, this isn't the right fit for everybody. And there's so many dealers out there who do an awesome job. This is just the way we do it that makes us who we are. And we always talk about fit all the time. There's some people who are perfect for another model, maybe the person across the street or the person across town. And there's some people who just live and breathe what we do. They love the basketball game and they love, training and they love being the number one dealer in the state. And, they love the rewards that come along with those things and the effort it takes to get there, right?
Dude, you might be the most community involved dealer I've ever spoken with. That's incredible.
Well, we have a lot of associates who are very passionate about that. As I said, we literally had over 100 associates donate their time last year. So we're fortunate to have so many people that care about this community that want to give back in that way.
That's great. I want to shift gears. I want to talk a little bit about dealership operations. I know we briefly touched on margins. I'm curious if you're seeing any pressure points on the horizon, anything that is concerning you from a margin compression perspective.
I would simply say, for those of us who were in this business in 07, 08, and we all knew that the business was really good at that time. And we're like, man, this is just going to come to a soft landing. We're just going to slowly matriculate. And that's not what happened. The whole world crashed and it was really tough for so many people. Again, I was at a General Motors dealership at that time and it was incredibly painful and tough. This is manufacturer by manufacturer. Again, I think a lot of the Stellantis stores saw kind of that 07, 08 really dramatic shift from it's really good, maybe some of the best times ever, to holy cow, it's maybe as tough as it's ever been. But I think some of the other manufacturers have had kind of that soft landing where, in our lifetimes, there probably will not be another event like COVID that will drive margins the way they did. But to be able to come down from that systematically, I think will continue to happen in some of those manufacturers based on what we're seeing. I don't see any sort of crazy boogeyman that's going to just create a market crash. I'm really bullish on the economy right now. Even some of these tariffs that they're talking about, they're going to have an impact, no doubt. I have no question that, but I have the utmost confidence that the manufacturers and our leadership are going to figure that out and not lead us into complete devastation as a industry. The auto industry is so important to this economy that there's a ton of thought into the auto industry when we're coming up with a tariff. Whether that's steel or from a country or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic as well. I think things will be good. There's always going to be bumps along the road, but I think overall I'm pretty optimistic.
This episode is brought to you by CDG Recruiting. The Car Dealership Guy platform has direct access to thousands of skilled professionals in the dealership and automotive industries. And so, building on top of our free industry job board, we've launched CDG Recruiting, a hands-on white glove automotive recruiting service. Whether you're looking to fill roles in dealership management, the C C-suite, F&I, fixed ops, auto tech, or SaaS, we take the hassle out of hiring by doing the heavy lifting for you. It's easy. Start by submitting a confidential talent request on our website. Next, we connect you with a dedicated talent expert who will thoroughly understand your unique needs. And finally, we present you with top-notch candidates who are ready to drive your business forward. And here's the best part. We vet and screen every candidate for you so you don't have to. And with our placement guarantee, hiring through CDG Recruiting is 100% worry-free. Collectively, our team has decades of experience and has successfully placed over 1,000 roles in the automotive industry, so you know you're in good hands. If you're ready to find your next rockstar employee, try CDG Recruiting today by visiting cdgrecruiting.com or clicking the link in the show notes below. Again, that's cdgrecruiting.com.
The last thing I want to say about that point, though, is I think the one thing that people still need to figure out is where's the soft spot with EVs? Because some manufacturers have made significant investments that hopefully they can either pull out of some of that to get to more of a natural level or find a way to make it make sense on their balance sheet where it doesn't impact the rest of their business. You know, there are customers every day coming in asking for affordable vehicles, whether they're, ICE or hybrid or, some do come in for EVs. So if they can't reinvest in their traditional legacy business, ICE and hybrid, that could pose a problem for some OEMs.
Have you upgraded your facilities? Have you made investments for a more EV world?
So we have upgraded our facilities. We're constantly spending money on our facilities, whether it's new conference. We have construction going on at our Subaru dealership right now. We did construction last year at our Toyota store. We repaved our entire 12-acre lot. We haven't done anything specifically for EVs, quite frankly. And Ann Arbor is a town that has I think relatively speaking, an okay demand for EVs. There's literally a Tesla dealership right across the street. When I look out my window, I'm looking at a Tesla dealership, but we just haven't seen an overwhelming demand for customers coming in and asking for EVs. Thus, we haven't done a lot to our facilities. But it's proportionate, right? If we had 25% of our customers asking for EVs, we'd probably spend 25% of the budget. But we have single digits, asking for EVs, and so I would say our investments have been proportionate to that.
So tell me more. You mentioned making proportionate investments and really listening to the customer in that sense, or ingesting those data points, right, and making smarter decisions. How else are you using just data analytics? I'm curious if there's anything else you're doing there unique on the inventory front or anything else in your business. Just talk to us. I'm just curious. Tell me a little about just data analytics usage, CDPs, all that good stuff in your dealership.
Yeah. So this isn't unique to us, and it certainly isn't unique to top performing dealerships, but we use a lot of analytics to run our business, and where that comes out in a few ways. And this is one thing that I loved working at Lithia for, because Lithia had just such a swath of data, real-time data that you could see if you were a Toyota dealer, how are all the other Toyota dealers doing across the country, et cetera. And so we use outside companies now for that. We use 20 group composites. We also operate on EOS, the way we operate our business. So there's a certain amount of weekly tracking of key fundamentals and KPIs that we track every single week when it comes to that. You mentioned CDPs. I think that's certainly the way of the future. And there was a period in time where we invested a lot of money, and I'm talking 5 years ago.
Wait, by the way, can you explain what it is I didn't even explain it myself, but can you explain for anyone listening that's maybe new to it, what it even means?
Yeah, so customer data platform where you have all of your customers' data that you own, and you have it in usually what's called a data lake. And in this data lake, you can then segment out your customers and offer unique messages to customers. So the Tundra customer at the time when there's a Tundra special and they're in market to buy. The Camry customer that's in market for an oil change with an offer. The Subaru Outback customer who is ripe for a set of tires to offer a tires set. And I think that is certainly the way of the future. Unfortunately, with the way that, most data lakes and CDPs are created today, they are extremely expensive. And if you're not a very large group, it's going to be very hard. And even the very large groups are struggling with implementation and finding ways to really be efficient with that. Now, could AI change that? Potentially, in a way that it's changing a lot of different industries. We have a lot of our senior team right now doing a 10-week AI challenge that's put on by an AI institute based out of Dubai. And so we're learning a lot of things about AI and how it can be used in our business. And maybe a CDP is something that's greatly benefited by AI, but I haven't seen anyone really crack that code today. A lot of people are trying, and a lot of people are investing heavily in it, and they should, right? That's being a student of the game, and that's reinvesting and trying. I just haven't seen anybody who's really cracked that code and is just head and shoulders above everyone else in the industry doing that.
Michael, before we wrap up, first, I want to ask you a more general question, which is, if there's one takeaway you could leave a dealer, an industry professional, someone listening to this podcast, right? You have very strong opinions. You're the definition of a student of the business. What is that one takeaway that you would want to leave someone listening to you right now?
Well, one of the things that I think makes us unique and why I feel like we all work so hard is that one common vision. And one of the first things that we do when we, go into an acquisition is we talk about our core values in our mission statement. And again, our mission statement is we inspire people to grow, making our families, our team, and our community proud. And one of the ways that we lived it out that we didn't get a chance to talk about is one of the most significant differentiators. We have an entire We Auto University. So we have a director of the We Auto University, and this person's job is to curate classes that range from trade appraisals to service advisor training to tire sales training to physical fitness to personal finances to emotional intelligence to used car inventory. Last year, we had 55 different We Auto University classes that we offered. We pay all of our instructors, and our instructors are mostly subject matter experts inside of our business, but sometimes we'll pay an outside instructor to come in and be a specific instructor.
And who builds the curriculum? Like, what is the actual curriculum? Who builds that?
So our subject matter experts get to our director of the We Auto University, and they propose a class. I'd like to do a class on new car incentives or whatever the class is, and they'll talk through that curriculum, and it gets approved, and then the class gets launched. And so when we launch that, we launch it into our application Work in Me. We have software that helps us with all of our cultural events, with all of our training, with all of our development. And then our employees can sign up for our training classes, our We Auto University classes inside the Work in Me application.
Wow.
One thing I want to leave everybody with is find a mission that your team can be really passionate about and are willing to work harder towards than somebody you're competing against. And we truly feel that our employees working harder than most people to live out our mission statement of we inspire people to grow, making our families, our team, and community proud. And we try to find as many different ways as possible to manifest that. And that's the one bit of advice that I would give every first-time dealer, general manager, operator, etc. What is that differentiator that your team can do better than everybody else and can rally behind? Because it takes hard work. And even the cultural stuff, all of the cultural stuff sounds so awesome. And who wouldn't want to have a company basketball game and a company flag football game? But the problem that most people run into is, well, man, that means somebody's got to call a local field. Somebody's got to then go find refs. Somebody's then got to do the work to schedule it and then ask people to play and organize practices. That's work. People want good culture until they realize how much work it takes to have great culture. And that's where I think that we really excel is we're very passionate about building that, and we're willing to do the hard work to have that happen.
You're an enigma, my friend.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate the kind words. You're always too kind.
Before we wrap up, is there something I haven't asked you? There's many things I haven't asked you, but anything specific, any closing thoughts, any questions for me, anything else on your mind?
Yeah, you haven't asked me how many days since Michigan has lost to Ohio State, and that is 1906, my friend. It's been 1906 days since the Buckeyes have beaten the Wolverines.
Actually, well, I'll tell you what, on a sort of related note, we spoke about the Eagles. That was before the podcast, but I'll tell you what I didn't ask you. I just thought about this, so I'm answering my own question. You were telling me before the podcast that there are two people who you'd like to see on the pod. So who are they? Hit us.
Yes. So the first one I will say is we felt very fortunate. We have the Walzer Group in our 20 group, and they are a fantastic organization. They do so many things right. But I think they have one unique, in addition to Andrew Walzer, who is a great leader and runs an awesome organization, but their CHRO, Sherry Schultz, I hate to put her on the spot like this because I probably should have texted her or asked her, but she just is a really out-of-the-box thinker that I think would help so many organizations who aren't big enough to have a full-blown CHRO, but be a thought leader.
Chief Human Resources Officer, right?
Yep. To help all of us think about, human capital and what that looks like for the next 10 to 15 years, I think is incredibly important. Was so grateful for the hour that we got to spend with her. I think she's fantastic. And I would also say, Yossi, you need to be on a podcast because I think that you have an awesome story. I felt very fortunate. I got to hear you tell your story, and that's kind of one of the ways that we met. But I was a fan before. I'm a believer. I'm like with Car Dealership Guy because you have such an awesome story and you're such a likable person. And I think more people need to hear more about, what you're trying to do today, but trying to do in the future and a lot of your leadership principles. I just think that you offer a lot to our industry and you deserve your own podcast. Full blown.
I appreciate it.
EG podcast.
So 2 things. Number 1, thank you. And I'll tell you that you saw how the sausage is made. Like when I was at an event that you invited me to. That's the context for our listeners. But I spoke there and it was about like an hour and 15 minutes and it was very vulnerable. But you saw how the sausage, I went detail down to pennies and cents. People were like, I just shared it all on the table. So I think that's probably why you felt that way as well, because it was really, really heavy detail, which typically is just not shared with, before that conversation, frankly, I don't think I shared it with anyone other than my wife and maybe really close friends. Even then, they probably not. So that's one thing. And the second thing is we did do that. It was called the Flip the Script Car Dealership Guy podcast. And we actually released it on December 31st. It was an idea that the team had where they're like, hey, let's flip the script on you. And so check it out. If you haven't seen that, we'll link it in the show notes as well. And I'll email it to you. But it's called Car Dealership Guy Flip the Script. Check it out. I think you'll like it.
I love it. So Yossi, what's one thing that we as dealers can do to help the Car Dealership Guy podcast be even more successful? Because you give so much to us. What can we as a community give back to you and your effort? Because I truly believe you're one of the great guys and your team are trying to do so many things to benefit us. How can we help you?
For the record, I did not ask Michael to ask that. So just putting it out. Everyone's probably like, oh, he plugged that in. No, I did not. But I do love that question. I appreciate it. The only thing I ask for, if I can ask for anything, is just share any piece of content that you find valuable with some other person in our industry that wants to get better, some other, dealer, vendor. Whoever it is, that's I think, that's the best thing for our business. At the end of the day, if we create quality, high value content, people will share it. And that's what we seek to do. Just put out really good stuff out there and hope that it's so good that someone will share it and our audience grows. And so that's what I would say. If you enjoy something, share it with one other person, 2 other, 3 other, however many. That is extremely valuable for us and we appreciate it.
Well, we'll continue to do that. And if there's ever anything else, just ask. Again, big fan of yours and appreciate all you do for all of us dealers.
Michael, thanks for coming on. I was so looking forward to this podcast, given, everything was just, we've spoken over the last month or 2 months. And I woke up today at 4 a.m. We were traveling, not because of the podcast. I was looking forward to it, not that much. No, I'm just kidding. But no, in all seriousness, I woke up at 4 a.m. and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to I don't wake up at 4 a.m. usually. We're just traveling with the family. So I was like, how am I going to survive this day? But here I am. It was great. I survived it. I feel energized. And dude, seriously, thanks for coming on. This was awesome.
Thanks, Yossi.
Appreciate it.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.